psychologist in South Australia. My name's Angela Hayden. I've recently taken on the chair role for the SA COP committee, and we're very pleased to have Donna Buchanan and Jessica Rodgers from Verizon here to present with us today. Jess and Donna will talk to us about safety leadership and how we can promote psychological safety to create an engaged workforce. We're very excited to have them here, and thank you for joining us, Jess and Donna. Just a few housekeeping things before we begin. So as you would have noticed, your mics have been muted and your cameras have been turned off. If you do have any technical issues or any concerns, please pop it into the chat function and we'll do our best to help you out. But often a good thing to do is just to log out and try and log back in and see if that helps with your connection. And also just letting you know that this session is being recorded as well, and this will be made available to all of those who've registered after the session, most likely tomorrow. So I'll introduce our presenters now. So Donna Buchanan is a performance coach with Verizon, and she brings over 20 years of experience in the utility industry. She works to enable excellence in human and business performance through connecting strategy, style and systems, enhancing leadership capability, team problem solving and emotional intelligence. Jessica Rodgers is a performance coach and assessment lead with Verizon. She is a provisional psychologist and currently completing a Master's of Applied Psychology Organisational. Jess is passionate about creating organisations that are fit for people and the future to thrive in a world of fast change. So it sounds like we're in very good hands here, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. We have some time at the end of the presentation for questions. However, feel free to use the chat function throughout to ask your questions, and Jess and Donna may be able to get to them during the presentation, but if not, we'll do our best to answer them during the Q&A at the end. They'll also share their email addresses as well, so if we don't get to your question today, feel free to contact them directly. I'll hand over the reins now to Donna and Jess, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Angela, and hi, everybody. Just while we're introducing this session, I'm going to share the screen to bring up the slides for today. As Angela mentioned, Jess and I are part of the Verizon team. We are also part of another company called Data Drives Insight. For us, these two organisations are very symbiotic. One has born the other, if you like. What is common between the two is that we are passionate about thriving individuals and organisations, and we are really keen on understanding more about human potential, how we relate to each other, how we interact so that we can achieve things in groups. We love data, some more than others, perhaps, because we do really believe that with data we can create insight, and with insight we can create transformation. And we very much believe in strengths-based work. So working with people to help them direct their energy towards what they can create and what's already within them and what additional potential they have within them to help create that. Two really important values for us at Verizon. One is mastery. What that means to us is we don't sit in front of you as experts. We are on a learning journey, and we're really excited to share with you what we've learnt so far. And also fun is one of our values. So hopefully we have some fun along the way as well. What are we hoping to achieve with you guys today? We want to be able to share and explore what we believe are the factors that influence psychological safety and engagement. And part of the way we do that is using assessment tools to assess capability, culture and impact. And when we're talking about impact, we are focused on psychological safety and engagement, but it's related to other performance factors for organisations and people as well. However, before we get stuck into all of that, we're also keen to just know who's with us today in this session. So if we can work with the technology here, we're keen to see who's with us, and using the chat function, just share where you're coming to us from, so where you're zooming into us from, and what you hope to gain from today's session. So let's see if we can see the chat. There we go. So I know when we were working with the group to set up the webinar, we were people mentioned that this is people coming from across Australia. So I was really keen to see what does that actually mean? Is it just the eastern states, or you know, some locals here in Perth as well? I can see some popping up there. So Bris Vegas, I think sometimes people refer to it. So that's great. Melbourne, I got a bestie over there in Melbourne, so it's great to have you guys with us as well. So yes, also I can definitely see that it's all across Australia that we have you guys coming in from. That's great. Is there anything in particular that you guys were hoping to get from the webinar today? Okay, someone's designed some culture measurements. So looking forward to hearing more about the tools. That's great. We love talking about the assessment tools that we've been part of designing and researching. So we'll definitely be talking to you about those and also what the research is telling us from those assessments. We work with the assessments both within individuals about their own results, and then, like I mentioned, there's some data nerds in the team who like to actually look at all of the data and see what insights we can get from all of that data. Okay, so I think, should we get stuck into it, Jess?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the chat and it seems like we've got people from everywhere. So thank you so much for coming. We're so happy to have so many of you turn out and to have this opportunity to share with you. As Donna said, it really is a learning journey for all of us. And so we're really open and encourage you to share your ideas, questions, thoughts in the chat so we can kind of engage with that as much as we can as well. So before we actually jump into the tool, I'll let you sort that out. We want to set up with a bit of we're going to set the scene for how this really came about. And so we like to work within the integral model. So that's probably something you're pretty familiar with. Yeah, thanks. Maybe I'll handle that.
Now we're talking about who's controlling it. You go.
So we like to work with the integral model. And the reason we use this is because it's a really neat model that clearly puts in how our views and beliefs impact our behaviours and actions, and thus leading to our results. So we think about this in the context of safety, and we found that this model very perfectly helped us to identify how can you make that happen now? Yep. How personal safety interacts with process safety to then result in greater safety outcomes. So that really led us down a path of, well, what's actually needed? We understand that there are personal attributes and things that influence how we all interact and how that interplays with the environment, but what is actually needed at the individual and at the group level to ensure that we are achieving the most safe results?
Yeah, and I think we were really interested to see in our research that we saw over time that researchers and practitioners kind of swung between a focus on personal safety and process safety. Certainly early on, when there was almost nothing in place to keep people safe, a focus on process safety was really important. And now we're finding that people are coming together and integrating the two views, that it's personal and process safety. That's really important. Yeah. So what is needed at a group and an individual level? That was the question that got us really curious. And it's those things we're going to be talking about today. So what we've discovered so far is there are 4 factors of individuals and groups that, if present to a greater extent, will help create and sustain a generative culture. And so when we talk about generative, I'll explain a little bit more about that. Some of you might recognise it from Westrom's work in culture typologies. What's really important about the 4 factors is we do believe that it's almost like a wheel. So when you think about a wheel, a really small wheel, when it turns, it has to turn really fast and really hard to get somewhere. A larger wheel, it doesn't have to turn as fast as hard. It has to do less work. And it's the same with the 4 factors. When they're present in an individual or a team to a greater extent, their ability to create and sustain a generative culture is much better. So what is generative culture? You can see on the screen here, I've put in the 3 typologies that Westrom identified in his work, looking at information flow and what do leaders focus on or turn their attentions to. And he identified 3 typologies: toxic, bureaucratic, and generative. I'm going to focus on the generative today because that's the really cool stuff. We obviously acknowledge that toxic and bureaucratic cultures do exist. And the challenge is to, like we mentioned before, create and sustain a generative culture. Generative culture isn't a final destination. It's something that it needs nurturing. And generative culture is, I guess, expressed or has the characteristics of being purpose-oriented. So we're focused on the purpose of the organisation, why are we here and what are we trying to achieve. It's characterised by great information flow, high degrees of cooperation, trust and bridging across teams, not just within teams. Psychological safety is present, and so it creates openness, curiosity, care and systematic learning. That learning means we are really keen to make sure that we know that we've got the right people, the right information, the right form and the right time coming together to encourage and activate that learning. And when things do go wrong, as they do occasionally, people look for a systematic cause and systematic solutions. We're integrating things. We're looking at how things connect and interrelate to make things safer. So that's really what generative is all about for us and how we can use Westrom's to engage in what's generative safety culture. If I was to boil that down to what's the difference between the 3, it's the focus. So toxic is typically, it's about me. I'm going to behave in a way that keeps me safe. Now it's a positive intention. I want to stay safe, both physically, mentally, psychologically. So I'm going to behave in that way. So I'm going to hold information because I believe it's better to hold on to it rather than share it, those sorts of things. In bureaucratic, the shift and focus is about the team. So my team's performance, my team reaching its goals, my team achieving is more important than the whole achieving. And that's where generative actually brings about the focus on the whole, the collective us, the organisation. And you can see that purpose orientation starting to come through. It's less about following rules to be safe as a team and to succeed as a team, and being really focused on what's the ultimate goal and purpose of the organisation. That's a lot in a short period of time. We are now going to talk about the 4 factors, and hopefully as we explore those 4 factors in a bit more detail, you'll see how when they're present to a greater degree, they will help create and sustain a generative culture.
Yeah, so the first factor is purposeful, and you'll see on the screen there that it's really comprised of 3 elements, and they are commitment, engagement, guidance. Oh yeah, just the 3. And you'll see the other dot points there, which really just encapsulates those 3 elements really neatly. So we see from our research and our experience, the purposefulness provides practical guidance and orientation to a person, team or organisation, indicating the direction of change. So we've also seen that when people know why they're doing a project or a task, they then can actually self-correct, or they feel empowered to self-correct when they get off course. And that purpose is really enacted through shared commitments. So it's communicated in both visible and invisible ways. We also know that when integrity is broken, that it is restored through rebuilding that commitment or recommunicating that commitment, thus rebuilding trust again. And we know that leaders engage others to be more purposeful and committed, continuously learning on how to improve in their safety performance. So if you think about a time where you've worked with a purposeful leader, and I'm sure that someone has just come to your mind, that, visionary, that person that you worked with, that you just oozes purposefulness. And I want you to think about that person. I'm sure that a few of those elements have come out that they were really strong in.
Yeah, I think when I think of someone, I really connect with their willingness to share their commitment about why safety was important to them and to the organisation, and was willing to engage me in that and challenge me. to expand my understanding of what commitment was really about, and also to challenge me to engage others in my commitment when I hadn't really connected with it. So it's that real sense of, I know why I'm here, why it's important, and I'm willing to have conversations with others about it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
just the down. Yeah,
great. And the second factor is caring. So this one is comprised of empathy, well-being, and development focus. And this one really is, I mean, you can kind of gather what this one's about, but it really is about having regard for the intrinsic value of people, and actively providing what is needed to support their health, development, safety, and well-being. Caring is a really personal domain. So it really is about those relationships and connecting with others, to find that mutual understanding while also collecting diverse perspectives to achieve the best outcome. It's about creating an environment where people respect not only themselves, but also others, and where there is trust and radical candor. Care really does start with self. So this is something that we find, with, nearly all organisations that we work for, that caring is those two elements of self and caring for others. And we know that leaders cannot lead from an empty cup. So this really focuses on being able to recognise where your boundaries are, where your capabilities are, where your energy is, to ensure you're, actively able to care for others the best way you can. Anything you want to add on caring?
No, I think that point about caring for self as well as others is really important. We'll talk about this later in this research, but what we know is when people talk about caring for self and then don't care for self, then they're not into integrity with the message. So it's a really important element to measure as well.
So the third is curious. And this one is around openness, listening, and inquiry. So it seems pretty self-explanatory, this one. It's around seeking new information, new perspectives, ways of doing things, and, best practice to improve safety performance. But it is more than that. It's actually the ability to suspend your own judgment and hold the space to be open to new things, be open to learning, be open to challenge your own thoughts, and taking that on board. The learnings are really sought as opposed to seeking blame. So again, holding that space to explore what the situation is, what's actually occurring, and what can be learned from that to then further improve that in the future.
Yeah, I think this is really connects really well with that concept of safety as imagined versus safety as done. Yeah. So often we have policies and processes and practice written down to say, this is how we think you should do this task. And then we often discover, and if we hold our curiousness open for as long as possible, we discover that the way we're actually doing it is a little bit removed from how it's written down and how it was originally imagined. And closing the gap between the two can improve safety performance. So remaining open to going, okay, you're doing it differently to how we imagined it. Why is that? What's going on there? How do we improve it? How do we close the gap? So I think curiosity is really connected to that concept of, work as imagined versus work as done.
Yes, and I feel like that leads really well into our next domain, because absolutely curious does, and our final domain is connecting. So, stemming from exactly what you've just said, it's about being on that curious journey and then to understand how all of those interdependent relationships work together, and what those learnings how they can be applied to all of those interrelated areas. So connecting is systems, protecting, and bridging. And this one is really allowing us to see how things are related. We seek to understand how roles, teams, and functions must integrate to optimize the performance of the whole system. Connecting is increased when people work together to create models of how the system works and then continually updating them as new information is received. There's a concerted effort to understand how people close to the work understand the work, and then how it's actually done. So exactly what you were just talking about. And there's an element of ensuring that things are done at the right time, by the right people, with the right tools. So really that strategic planning around incorporating all of those elements. Now, this one is a highly intentional and focused approach that leads to operational discipline and maximizes the use of all resources to achieve the purpose. So if you think back to that leader we were talking about just before that you held in your mind, it'd be interesting to kind of just take a moment to think about how many of these domains or traits within these domains were present in that leader.
Yeah, I think often we find that leaders have some of them, a lot of them, or they might have strengths in some and gaps in the other. And actually understanding, we've got this belief that the 4 factors are really important for creating generative cultures, which have high degrees of engagement and psychological safety. And yet, what do we know? What do we know about where people are at right now? How are leaders placed now in regards to these 4 factors? And so that led to us wanting to create assessments that help us understand that, and not just us, but leaders and individuals and teams. So what we have are 2 assessments. The first one is what we call the ISA 360. So it's an integral assessment of safety, and it's a 360 degree, funnily enough. So what this does, it assesses an individual's capability and the impact that they're currently having. So I guess from within the Wilbur model, what we're looking at is what are people seeing, what behaviours do people see, and what's the result they're getting. And then in the debrief of that 360, we're able to get an understanding of what might be the beliefs and values or views that that individual have that is driving those behaviours, that level of capability, and what result they're getting. And some of those results, of course, will be intended and some will not be intended. At a team level or group level, we have the I ask. So this is about saying, what is the team's capability? What are they doing as a collective group that is getting the results that they are getting? So when we talk about results, the I ask measures team engagement and team psychological safety. And it also measures team culture. So capability, culture, and engagement and psych safety. So it measures a lot. We're going to talk mostly about the ISA 360 day because we are talking about the 4 factors as it relates to leadership and how leadership has an impact on culture and outcomes. So we're going to give you a view of what this data looks like when we measure it. So it's the typical 360. Someone is sent a survey to complete for themselves and they get feedback from their line manager, peers, and direct reports. And they're asked a bunch of questions on a rating scale of 1 to 5, from strongly agree to strongly disagree. And what we show them is this. So the 4 factors around the outside, the blue shading is an indication of where the raters believe this person is at right now. So what's their current level of capability? The orange shading is the rater's view of where they would like this individual to be. So you can see quite quickly how an individual would get a perspective of where are their strengths, so where are their peaks in their current performance, and where are the gaps, where are the things that people are looking for from them. So the gap between the blue and the orange. And for this particular individual, we can see a few things. Firstly, we can see there's some of their strengths. So actively sharing their commitment to safety. So purposeful is quite a strength for them. They're happy to have conversations about why safety is important. In caring, we have some strengths, particularly actively caring for others, being respectful. Where there is opportunity is showing around here on the left-hand side. So on the left, what we have is indications that people believe there is opportunity for growth in practicing self-care. That's that thing that pops up quite regularly. Being calm in a crisis. Seeking others' perspectives and seeking to understand different views about how things are working. Interconnect, or the connecting piece, is about this person has the ability to explore using experts outside the team more often, connecting with others outside to gather those different perspectives and views to get optimal results. And it's the same with encouraging sharing. So when they have made an improvement or have made things better, share it with others so others can be safer or be doing things more effectively. And so this is just an example of some of the data that we get and share with individuals. What we then help them try to connect with is, okay, this is my current capability and my opportunities for growth. I can probably pick a few things to focus on. So what will I get if I do that? What impact will I have? And that's why we also measure impact. These questions are a combination of questions gathered from Amy Edmondson's work in psychological safety, as well as Gallup's work in engagement. And we ask a range of questions, some of them asked in the negative and some in the positive, just to keep people awake during the survey process. And we ask them to rate how they feel as a result of interacting with this individual. So if it was my results as a result of interacting with Donna, I feel, or I don't feel, depending on the question. If you think about the results we've just seen, really great, strong results in the purposefulness and caring. So committed and cares, opportunity for growth for engaging others, seeking different perspectives, as well as connecting things up, engaging with others to close the loop on processes and practices. What we see here is where there are reduced results in these questions is its linking. So for example, I feel that my input and ideas are valued. This is showing as less agreed in this case because there's opportunity for growth with this leader to actually do more engaging of others and bringing their ideas in. This is potentially also contributing to how well people feel heard at work. And if we go down towards the bottom of the list, so about the third question up, I feel empowered to resolve issues when they occur. At this point, it would appear potentially that this leader is doing a lot. They have a lot of answers to problems and they're solving problems, which is great. However, it doesn't grow people's capability to solve problems on their own. Where the ability here for this leader is to actually empower their team to solve their own problems and to use their own ideas about how to do things differently for more safe outcomes. So we can see that with the questions that we ask in the assessment, it's a combination of where am I at and where are my growth opportunities, and what's the impact I'm currently having and have the potential to have. So we engage people in what would it mean for you if your team felt like their ideas and were valued, if they felt like they were more heard at work. These are not bad results, a 4.3 out of 6 that's not a fail. However, it's engaging them in the full potential. What if you had a little bit more feeling that their ideas were heard or feeling more empowered to participate? So that's just an example of how the results look at an individual level. Of course, I mentioned data nerds earlier. So we're also interested in knowing, so what is all of the data telling us? That's one individual's results. What's the collective data telling us? Yeah, so what we've found from our data collection from the last sort of three or 4 years now is that many of our leaders out there working across Australia really appear strongest in purposeful and caring, but there are significant gaps in curious and connecting. So if we think about the results that we just saw, I mean, that is exactly what we saw, right? That there was a lot of strength within that purposeful and caring section. If you think about caring, there's a little bit around that self-care that was missing. But when it comes to that curiosity and connecting, that's where the gaps were. And that was where the strongest desire by their raters were as well. So if we think about this practically as well, what we've experienced is that, leaders tend to, I guess at the start of your career, you get into the job, you're there because you know what you're doing, you've got the qualification, you've demonstrated competence in certain areas. You might work there for a little while, then you start moving your way up, you learn more, get more responsibility, but then you're starting to lead people. And what we've seen that through this sort of promotion, without it really being sort of facilitated, we find that those areas around curiosity and connecting are underdeveloped. So those capabilities that
help to strengthen those skills are underdeveloped because the incentive or the reinforced behaviour has been more technically based.
So essentially, I've been recognised for getting stuff done,
yeah,
and for knowing stuff.
Yeah.
And you might have seen this in workplaces that you work with, or even for yourself. The better you are at something, people kind of recognise that you're really great at this. Hey, can you take on this job? And the promotions start happening. However, as we go up the leadership ladder, what we know is actually less useful. It's our ability to achieve through others that's more important, or as important. So we probably still maintain technical elements to our role, but actually leading and guiding others is the greater balance of the role. However, because we've been recognised and rewarded for getting stuff done and having the answers to problems, and being an expert in things, our curiosity hasn't been fostered, perhaps, and connecting beyond self. So we've been working in our own areas, however, impacting others and engaging others may not have been part of that. And that's certainly something that I've noticed in organisations that I've worked with. And in fact, that profile was not too dissimilar to my own profile when I had it done when I was part of an operations and maintenance organisation. So, you know, for me, I was promoted on knowing stuff and getting stuff done. And when I had my ISA 360, I quickly got a little bit disappointed, I guess it's fair to say, in that the feedback was, yeah, Donna's great. She's really committed. She really cares. But the actual follow through isn't there. So my connecting was actually less than I'd hoped. My ability to follow through and make things happen, embed them, because I was working so hard doing everything, which meant I wasn't engaging people in the process with me. I wasn't being as curious. I wasn't getting different perspectives. I was just trying to make stuff happen. So it's a little bit close to home that I'm part of the norm, it would appear. And it just shows up in the way we achieve things in the workplace.
Yeah, so we were really interested as to why this was happening. So we did quite a few more analyses. We had a look at who our within our sample, who our high performers were compared with who our lower performers were. And we found that those that performed better, higher on the capability element had these impacts. So there was a direct correlation between their capability and the impacts that they were having on their staff. And what we could see was that people that were resulted in had a higher capability or strengths, their staff, 41% of their staff felt more valued. They felt 59% more listened to, 58% less avoidant of safety issues. 63% of them were more confident that changes would result in an improved process, and 57% were more likely to share ideas and concerns when compared to that lower sample, those low 10%. So we were pretty spun out by that, because if you think, those percentages, if you think about that in your work life, to think of 58 or 59% of your team feeling more listened to, like what kind of an impact would that actually have on the performance, on your relationships, on, everything that you're doing, everything that you're trying to achieve. So I guess, do we take a moment to think about that? Or
I just find this amazing that by showing a leader that when they are performing or have greater capability around these 4 factors, this is the potential impact they can have. And I know for leadership, sometimes it can feel a bit like you're a squashed tomato, damned if you do and damned if you don't. Working with people, we're humans, we're flawed, we're complex. And so it's really challenging. However, when we're able to sort of show this stuff to leaders and really engage them in the potential that they have as leaders, but also the potential their team have and their organisation have, it's really powerful. And I think particularly this helps people really engage with the idea of, okay, I know where I'm at now. I got feedback from people about where they would like me to be. How do I do that? What would happen if I actually committed to and engaged in transformation activities.
More generative behaviours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So for those leaders who did engage in transformation activities, we can reassure them. We can assure them that when they do, and we really do mean here actively engage. So if you know, for those who are prisoners in their own leadership development, it's challenging. But if they are fully present and participating in their leadership transformation, they can have an improved impact. For this one, it's, you can see between, I guess, talking technical terms, the blue column and the green column. Blue column meaning time 1 and green column time 2. For a leader, when they did their assessment, they grew their capability, and the impact they had were people were more likely to stop the job if it was unsafe. Imagine that. As a result of your own leadership growth and development, the impact you could have is your people are more likely to stop a job if it's unsafe. That's huge. They're going to be more confident that safety processes will help keep them safe. They'll actually use safety processes rather than think they're those things that are sitting on a shelf or just to annoy me. They're going to be feeling more empowered to resolve issues when they occur. So leaders will have hopefully less people knocking on the door going, hey, I've got this problem. They'll be more likely to come, hey, we had this problem and this is what we've done about it. How can we share it with others? And they're going to feel more listened to. So it's a huge impact that someone can have just by going through some growth and development activities if they really engage with it and they're willing to, I guess, unpack not only what they're doing, but what their views and beliefs are that sit behind what they're doing. So if we go back to that integral model where views determine or influence our actions that have then a relationship to the results we get, that's our intention, is to show insights for individuals and teams that this is what is possible. Yes, this is where you're at, but also this is where what's possible. All right, I think we've gotten through it, Jess.
Yeah, I mean, that's everything that we said we would share.
We're going to try this. We're going to try opening up the chat again and just throwing out to you guys to ask whatever questions you have about what's been shared, or if any thoughts have come to mind that we can have a chat about, and happy to go back to any of the slides that we've covered as well.
Do we want no mics off? No. Chat?
Just the chat, yeah.
So it looks like we have one here. Shall I read it to you?
Please.
Yeah, we can both answer. How can we adopt this approach where senior leaders do not demonstrate critical behaviours such as listening and delegating effectively, etc., and lack the self-insight or desire to initiate reflections on such practices? We often rely on senior leaders to sponsor such activities like a 360.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting, isn't it? So often we find leaders are happy to support others to gain insight into their leadership rather than their own. So they might, often it might be an executive saying, I need my leaders to do more of this. What can you do about that? And so that leadership group will participate in 360s. But of course, it's the leader who's actually providing feedback. And the leader's view does open up conversation about how they perceive things, what they're expecting from their team. And so we find that just by having them focus on someone else can also be helpful for them to become engaged in their own leadership journey as well. And of course, within the 360, we are able to show an individual not just what they think is the gap between where they are currently and where they would like to be, but where others feel they are. And we can break out the line manager's view, the peers view, and the direct reports view as well. So it kind of becomes a Johari window. Yeah. We'll either discover what we know about ourselves is the same as what other people know about us, or there might be some blind spots in there. And the blind spots are often a source of insight and transformation. So I'm hoping
that
helps
hopefully
answer.
I mean, if there's anything else that you want to know, you can absolutely email us, and we're more than happy to share everything, anything we have.
So where have we used it and what results did we?
Yes, there's a, I'm sorry, I've lost the questions now. Where is it? Case studies, of how you've used this assessment and the results you've achieved. I mean, we've been using this assessment now for a while through many organisations. I'm thinking of the case study just recently that we released for Lisa. Can I say that?
I don't know. I'm thinking of my organisation, so I'll talk about my organisation. Awesome. So the graph that we showed earlier, where we showed that leaders had gone on a transformation activity and they shifted, right? So maybe if I go back to that slide, can I do that?
I think so, yeah.
Right, so this slide is a case study and it's based on the organisation that I used to work at, and we had, over a period of 3 years, we assessed leaders' capability and the impact they were having. And that's what this graph is showing, a little bit of the impact they were having at time 1, the blue graph. We then, through the work of Raison, spent time with this organisation doing a whole bunch of things, from individual coaching, group coaching, working groups that worked on things to shift culture, using more of a generative approach to things they were already doing, like safety summits and safety meetings, to do in-field coaching, where we would partner with them as leaders were in the field, observe and provide immediate feedback around what's working well and what would be different. How could you grow curiosity in this moment? How could you grow connecting in this moment? And so we did a bunch of activities, and then we reassessed leaders. And those leaders who had, really engaged in those activities, had really participated, not just in those, but also in their own reflection and learning. The difference between time 1 and time 2, which was about 2-3 years later, is the blue and the green line. So what we have in our case study is, not only did it improve these things around engagement for the staff, it had a positive impact on the organisation's performance. Yeah. So safety performance improved, productivity improved. I'm loath to use numbers because I can't remember them accurately.
I know, I was just thinking, we do have this almost like, I think it's on our website, but we do have a little pamphlet thing that I'm more than happy to send to you as well, because it does have exactly what we did. It has exactly what we achieved in that time, including that organisational performance. So we had the real data or stats around how many LTIs were reduced, what the CIFR rates were, how much money they saved in terms of training and all of that. Yeah. So I can absolutely share that with you if you'd like.
Okay. So hopefully that's answered that question. Yes, there is a case study, yes, and you can access that on the website, or just reach out to us and we'll happily share that.
Yeah. There's one here referring to leaders. Can you please specify? Yeah, so which industry? So yeah, the ISA has been used typically with mining, utility and construction. So
we've also used it in aged care.
Yes, I was getting to that. So no, because I'm excited to share this, because in the previous years, a lot of this data has been framed around those industries. However, more recently, we are now collecting data from many of the aged care, disability and health sector leaders, and we have just over 3,000 data points at this point. So we are running analysis on that. We are, nothing's set in stone, right? We're still testing. So no, there are differences that we can see, which is really interesting. And, that's based off a completely different leadership model as well. So I'm happy to also share some interim findings with you if you're interested in those types of results as well.
Okay, someone was asking, just to go back to how the results are shown within the 360, and just describe a little bit more about what is being seen. So the blue blob or splotch or shading, depending on how you refer to it, is the current results. So if this was my results, where am I currently? The orange that's sitting behind it is, where do the people who rated me want me to be in 12 months' time? So the question is, where is Donna now? And where would you like her to be in 12 months? So it's very much growth-based and future-focused. So hopefully that answers that question and it gives some clarity. So the questions around the 4 factors are, I guess, capability-based. And then the questions for impact are a combination of the Amy Edmondson and the Gallup stuff around psych safety and engagement.
Yeah. What else?
Okay. Any papers? Someone was asking for papers.
Oh my
goodness.
We have so many.
Going down the Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole.
I guess our key, sorry, Sharon, she said splotches. Yes. Great description. Yes, we have heaps of papers, but I guess our key papers were really Ron Westrom, lots of Jane Reason. We've got Venicki or Hudson, that sort of mindfulness organisation. What else?
I think there's 3 that have kind of been the basis of the work we've got to here. So we've got a lot of stuff that's influenced us, but we often come back to Rick Stricker's work on the 7 practices for safety I can't remember when you wrote that paper, 2012.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
So yes, we can make that available. We'll show you where to find that. But if you Google Rick Stricker and process and personal safety, you should be able to find it. The other one is Ron Westrom's, A Typology of Cultures. And I think his paper is based on looking at health industry and understanding information flow in a health sector. And the third one, I've just lost it. Oh, Amy Edmondson's one on psychological safety. So just looking at what needs to be present for psychological safety. So they're the 3, I guess, authors, people and their papers that we often come back to. Okay, we're doing really well for time. Is there any other questions
or comments? I mean, we're happy to hear, chat about some stuff.
Oh, what was that NGO thing?
Are there differences? Oh, yes. Differences between organisations.
So I'm wondering if that is
industry.
Is curiosity more present in different industries to others?
Yeah. So I'm hesitant to share interim results of the only because it's still in testing phase, and I don't want to, share anything that's just that I'm not confident to share. I'm not comfortable in sharing before we've really finalised the stats. Just kind of thematically, I guess, we kind of see that, particularly in aged care, there is some stuff that's going on around that self-care.
Definitely self-care is a challenging area, or, even I guess pragmatically, you can understand that the care industry attracts carers and it's usually caring for other people. So when it comes to caring for self, that typically comes up lower. And I'm using typically because that's a non-researchy term, right? That's like a common language term.
Yeah, this works.
I haven't used the word correlation or something like that. And what we also see as well is in the care industry, there's a lot of health professionals who have a technical background. So again, curiosity is a challenge for them because again, they've been promoted on what they know. They've been guided by rules and regulations. Maintaining their registration is really important to them. So this guide's very much I'm an expert in this area and I'm going to tell you how to do things. And I'm going to solve problems. It's all positively intended, but it has the unintended impact of reducing engagement, feeling heard and listened and those sorts of things. So that's our gut feel at the moment, and we're continuing to gather data and do that analysis to see if that's actually what comes out in the data as well.
Yes.
In response to the question about does it use the same approach for most 60s?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have those breakout groups, those classic breakout groups, including your manager, your peers, your direct reports. That's the core, isn't it? We do have the option for certain industries to add breakout groups depending on you know, their structure.
Mm-hmm.
But we base all of our research on those core breakouts so that we can create a benchmarking norm group. Yeah. I saw one around the rank structure, first responder. So that is actually something new we are working with. So I'm going to write this client down because
Okay.
So recently, yeah, we've been collecting data from those first responders.
I don't understand this question. It's far too technical for me. Help me understand what the question's asking.
Oh, well, I mean, my interpretation is, yeah, those first on the scene, those high intensity organisations that need to, you know, they're the first.
Gosh, yeah. So I hear rank structure as bureaucratic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So that's how I interpret rank. And so, yes, we work with probably police would be very interesting. We haven't done work with them. We have done work with healthcare, aged care, and a combination of health and emergency response, if you like.
Yeah.
So we have done some work with them, and it's interesting to see, again, if we talked about that toxic culture, bureaucratic cultures and generative cultures, how those 4 factors can help them move into more of a generative without losing the benefits of bureaucratic. So sometimes we see the positive elements of bureaucratic, which is we're organised, it's clear roles and responsibilities, those sorts of things. And those things are working and supporting a generative culture rather than enabling us to have silos and blame others and point fingers for saying, no, that's not my job, it's your job, those sorts of things. So we haven't yet worked with police, but we've worked with first responders in terms of health and aged care.
Yeah. That's right. I think that might be. Was there anything else, or maybe
I think you want us to tell us to look at and read more about that you've picked up on?
I wonder if it's just if there are any questions that come up, or if you are seeking any of the resources that we have talked about today, just chuck your email address in the chat and we'll get in contact after and we can just send you what you'd like to know about. Jacques' theory of bureaucracy. Oh, that's not ringing any bells, but I'm definitely going to look that up.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, James, for that tip. We'll look that one up. Let's still continue the learning journey.
Yes, we appreciate all the knowledge. And it's Jacques, a good read. Awesome. Thanks so much. I think Anne,
I might jump in here if there are no further questions. I can see some people are popping their email addresses in the chat function, so that's really great. And as Donna and Jess said, if you've got any additional questions, feel free to contact them via their contact details on the screen. But on behalf of the College of Organisational Psychologists, I'd like to say a big thank you to Donna and Jess for giving their time to us this evening and sharing some of your research and some of the areas that you're clearly very passionate about. It's been really, really lovely to hear from you, and I'm sure we've all got some good takeaways. The concept of psychological safety and leadership driving a safety culture and engagement is really important in my organisation. So I know we'll be having some more conversations based on what you presented today, and hopefully it sparks some discussion for the rest of you as well. So thank you once again. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks everybody for joining.